Welcome to another fantastic episode here on Small Business Celebration Meat and Potatoes Live. In this episode, we're going to be talking about what to consider with employee number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and beyond. And we couldn't do this episode without our presenting sponsor, Oliver and Associates. At Oliver and Associates Real Estate, we know that buying or selling a home isn't just a transaction, it's a life moment. That's why they're committed to building relationships that last. They take the time to truly understand your needs, your dreams, your stories, so they can find you not just a house, but a home. Give Oliver Associates a call at 661-808-3444 or check them out at yourrealtor.us today. Today's Meat and Potatoes Live episode location is brought to you by Modern Gigi Gallery, an ultra-modern art gallery located in downtown Bakersfield, California, featuring the artworks of the modern abstract artist Johnny Ramos. Whether you're looking for artwork for your office, your home, or a postcard that you can send as a thank you note, go to Modern Gigi Gallery, located at 900 18th Street in Bakersfield, or give them a call at 661-840-8729, or email them at art@moderngigi.com today. And our guest this week is Dr. Juanita Webb of Webb Consulting. Welcome to Small Business Celebration.
Thanks, Michael. I'm pleased to be here.
And for visionaries who don't know who you are you, and what is it that you do?
Okay. Like you said, I'm Juanita Webb. We do HR consulting here in the local Bakersfield area, but also throughout the state of California. And for clients who have locations out of state, we even help with out-of-state services. But we provide basic HR consulting services. We do training, we do executive coaching, we help with employee handbooks, and sometimes we even dabble in some PI business, and I'm sure we'll talk about that.
I'm sure questions by Emily is going to dive right into that. But what kind of customers or what kind of business owners do you currently serve?
Okay, anywhere from a small business up to the larger businesses. You know, business that has 2 or 3 employees that's just getting started, needs to know how to establish some HR policies, procedures, those kinds of things, up to large corporations with 300 and 400 employees, where we provide services such as training or executive coaching for the larger organizations as well.
And that gets us into the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about, because one of the things I've learned by interviewing more than 300 guests on Small Business Celebration is that the business owner has to change in order to grow. And as much as we try to resist change sometimes, we have to. But isn't that the fundamental root of being able to grow, not just from first employee, but when you get that second employee?
Yeah, and it is, and that creates some additional concerns, because as a single employer, there's only certain regulations that you have to meet, but each additional person that you add brings on additional regulations that you have to be aware of and make sure you're complying with.
For those that live in California, because the rules in California are different than elsewhere, where are the tiers or where are the major brackets, thresholds, that a business has to pay attention or shift or change things as they grow from the first employee to, say, 50 or 100?
Right. Well, 50 is the big breaking point. Most employers are aware of that. When they reach that 50, that really implicates some federal laws that are going to implicate their business or impact their business. But there's a break at 25, there's a break at 15, there's a break at 10, there's a break at 5, there's a break at 2.
Really?
And so even just having that one more employee can make a difference for what you have to provide as the employer.
From the 30,000 foot view, what is that change from the first to the second employee?
Okay. Well, all employers, I'll give you a couple of examples. All employers have to comply, here in California, have to comply with things like child labor laws. Doesn't matter what size you are, you have to comply. All employers have to comply with Cal Savers, which is a retirement program so that individuals, if the business does not offer a retirement program, the employees can elect to contribute to a state program. All employers have to do that. But as you step up even to that second employer, now suddenly things like California COBRA for health insurance benefits starts to kick in.
And that's if the employee leaves.
Yes.
That's where COBRA
Right,
comes in.
where they might have to, you might have to continue their health insurance coverage,
Right.
or they would be eligible to continue their health insurance coverage for
Right.
that. So things like that. When you get to 5, things like some of the discrimination laws start to kick in. Some of the Fair Employment and Housing Act regulations begin to kick in that have to do with harassment and discrimination and retaliation. So
When we had your intro just a moment ago, we ran some B-roll video of your website.
Oh.
And so on that home page is a whole list of different criteria for different things. When they go through and they look at your website, is it broken down into 2, 5, 10, 15, 25, 50? Or is this something in which they would need to give you a call for their specific circumstance?
we didn't break it down that way on our website. We wanted to show the services that we offered for any size employer. So yes, they would need to give me a call to say, hey, I've got 6 employees now. What does that mean? Where do I fall?
What is the major trap that you have found for business owners, small business owners, when they get that second employee that they don't even bother to realize?
I think the biggest challenge for them is the shift in culture and bringing on that second person and the dynamics on the team.
How so?
Well, and you may be familiar with the theory of, it's called forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Okay.
This goes back
Sounds like something Patton would invent.
It sounds like it, yeah, something like that, yeah. There was a psychologist back in, I think it was the 70s, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he came up with this theory that anytime there's a group dynamic, as soon as you introduce a new person into that, you start the process over again.
Right.
And so you go to the forming stage, and now you've introduced somebody new, and everybody's getting used to everyone. And then you go to the storming phase, and that's usually the phase that business owners aren't prepared for.
Why not?
Because they don't realize that there's going to be conflict, there's going to be difficulties. There's
Why
going to be
can't we all just get along? I like you. Why don't?
right, but oh, he's stepping on my toes. That's my job. Why is he doing
That's
my
my
function?
corner of the sandbox.
Exactly,
Right.
and those are the kinds of things that most business owners, especially small business owners,
Right.
because they've been a one-man show.
Right.
And then they added that one person. It wasn't too bad of a dynamic change.
Right.
But now that third person coming in makes a huge difference. So.
One of the services that you also offer is the DISC profile. And for visionaries who aren't familiar with DISC, first of all, it's an acronym.
Correct.
And what is DISC, and why is this so important to developing your business and developing your culture, especially the storming part that you were talking about?
Right. And I'll just kind of give you a little bit of history on DISC. DISC is a system of identifying 4 different styles, and you're right, it was an acronym.
Personality styles.
Personality styles, work styles, D, I, S, and C. The D stands for dominance, someone who's very direct and straightforward.
Emily.
Juanita, yeah,
Right,
exactly,
right, sure.
The I is for influence, someone who's very fun-loving and outgoing. Michael, yes. The S is for steadiness, someone who's very process-oriented, likes today to be the same as tomorrow, the same as yesterday, just kind of very even-keeled. And then the C is for conscientiousness, somebody who's very detail-oriented.
Right.
And so knowing that about our employees can really help us to understand, how do we delegate to them? How do we make sure that they're excited about the work that they're doing? You know, what's the best method to work with them to help develop them and move them up within the organization? And so I use a tool through Wiley Publishing called Everything DISC. And that's a great tool because it not only tells you about your own style, you learn about yourself, but you also learn how to interact with the other styles. It gives you tools and strategies of how to do that, and it's a great tool. And they have a new online platform that makes it even more user-friendly and accessible.
With 4 personality styles, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're painting people's profiles with a broad brush.
Yep.
And so a big part of it is, like myself, I'm a blend of the 2.
Correct.
Emily's a blend of the 2. I'm sure, a blend of the 2 or 3 or 4. But as the business owner grows to that second employee, why is understanding personality profiles help you weather that storming phase that you were talking about?
Well, because now you know how to approach that person. You know how to go about dealing with them when they're in conflict. You know how to approach them or how to communicate more effectively with them.
Right.
You know, someone like yourself or I who are very direct and straightforward, very outgoing, we might like communication one way,
Right.
but someone who's more a reserved S or C style probably wouldn't like that same direct approach.
Right.
And knowing that helps us to overcome some of that conflict, the storming that might be going on.
So what you're saying is that when you give me a bullet point process, do this, bullet point list, you might as well just throw it out the window.
When I give it to you, it's okay, because you're just like I am. But if I gave it to somebody else, right, an S or a C style,
Right.
they might go, well, I don't have near enough information here
Sure.
to know what to do, right?
Exactly.
And so they're going to need more from me. And so I have to learn, as the owner, the manager, the executive, I have to learn how to flex my style to meet their needs.
And to get more detail on this, they just reach out to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the other things about growing as a business leader is, and you're growing your business from employee number 2 through employee number 5, is that there is no way that I, as the owner of Small Business Celebration, can possibly know every single HR law in California. I mean, oh my gosh. And it just seems like they keep adding more every year. How does somebody who has a small business like mine deal with that, especially as we're trying to keep up with the pace of growth and we're adding on people? Okay, I can deal with all these new people that are coming in, but oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of bureaucracy back there. I can't handle that.
Right.
How do we deal with that?
Well, and that's the whole point. You're the expert in your business,
Right.
and that's what you need to do and focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I can be that expert for you in the HR arena and keep you informed. And so what I do for my clients once they are on board with me is I keep them informed by sending out updates. Hey, new law.
Right.
Hey, be aware. Hey, pay attention. This is coming down the pike. Make sure you're aware of it, kind
Right.
of thing. So,
And when the business grows and you're helping them with this, inevitably there's going to be an HR issue.
there is.
When the employer or the business owner has this issue, hopefully they have a relationship with you and you've gone through, helped them with their employee handbook and the processes and the like. But when there is an HR issue, where do you get involved with this for the business owner?
Yeah. To come in alongside them. I can be there. I can actually handle the issue for them if they want to back out and not have to be involved.
And sometimes that's better.
Many times, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Because many times, and I always explain this to my clients, for me, it's transactional. For you, it's emotional.
Right.
Because you know this person, you're intertwined with them, they're your employee, you've got a relationship with them.
Right.
I can come in and handle this as a transaction. I don't have that same emotional connection.
Right.
So it makes it much less personal, and it's not as hard for me to do that as it is for the owner to do that.
Now, one of the things that I absolutely love about you and your business, you're a private investigator.
I am, yes.
Why?
Well, that came about, probably 15 years ago, probably a little longer than that, more like 17 or 18 years ago, when we began to do investigations, when the whole issue of sexual harassment began to be a big issue in the state back in about 2005, when they legislated that you had to provide sexual harassment training. We began to see a lot of concerns coming out in businesses. They became much more aware of, hey, that's what's going on, that's a harassment concern, I need to do something about it.
Right.
Well, we found out that in order for us as HR professionals to go in and assist a client to investigate that or look into it, try to resolve the issue for them, you either had to be a private investigator or a licensed attorney. It was a lot easier to become a private investigator than it was to become an attorney, and so that was the route we went. To become a licensed investigator, and so I've been doing that since 2007.
And just so, in the interest of fairness, you check out both parties.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Well, because I have to know what the employee was doing, but then I have to know, was the employer following the policies that they've said, these are the things we're going to do, this is how we're going to treat our employees. Are they doing it that way? And the employee says, well, no, this is what they did. Okay, I've got to look at both sides to make that determination as to who's being honest and straightforward, and is there evidence that backs it up. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Speaking of fun, she's been dreading this, I can tell. That brings us to the fortune cookie game. And the rules of the fortune cookie are, I've got a sealed fortune cookie here in my hands. It is not been opened. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this fortune cookie to our guest. She's going to unseal the fortune cookie, break open the fortune cookie, read the fortune cookie aloud, and add "in my business" at the end of it, and then expound upon this. And what is your fortune?
I like this one. You will enjoy a trip to the Orient in my business. I love that one. Yes, I can go to the Orient. Yay.
So how would you conduct your business on the trip to the Orient?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, Michael, because I conduct my business 24/7 no matter where I am. I can do that remotely. Most client issues that come up are, hey, can you help me with this? Explain to me what to do. How do I handle this? And I can do that over the phone.
Okay, so you do realize that the next time when you go to the Orient, especially if you're on the Great Wall of China, you have to video record on your
take some
photos
pictures.
and say, hey, we've got this HR problem, and now it's all big tax write-off, right?
There we go, right, yeah. I can do all of that.
And by the way, that fortune cookie was brought to you by Billy's Bamboo Chopsticks here on 18th Street. They make excellent, wonderful food. If you haven't checked them out, please do. They're also the ones who donated the fortune cookie for the fortune cookie game. And now, the part that you all have been waiting for. So many of you, if you've been watching the main show, there is a certain person behind the scenes who asks the most intelligent questions that end up on the main show. Usually I just cut mine out and put hers in. Yes, it's Questions by Emily. Take it away.
And Questions by Emily is sponsored by Casdor Consulting Group. Hunting for top-tier talent for your business? Look no further than Casdor Consulting Group. Their mission is to deliver world-class staffing and direct hire services by truly listening to your needs. At Casdor Consulting, it's not just about filling positions, it's about creating a culture of mutual success for both candidates and clients. With unmatched customer service and a commitment to earning your trust, they're redefining the staffing industry one placement at a time. Ready to experience the future of staffing? Visit CasdorConsultingGroup.com or call them at 877-800-4622. That's CasdorConsultingGroup.com or 877-800-4622. And let's build your legacy together.
Hello, Visionaires. I'm Emily. I've got questions, and if you've got questions, I've got the live stream open, so feel free to drop them in the chat. First thing, though, hello.
Hi, Emily.
Some questions I was jotting down as you were chatting with Michael. How do you become a private investigator? How did you even go about figuring out you could do that?
Well, I just happened to be lucky enough that I was working for someone who was a private investigator, doing part of his business as well, assisting him. He was one of my clients, and so he helped us through that process. Actually, it's an application that you have to fill out with the state, but you have to have someone to sponsor you who is already a licensed investigator.
That you're not a crazy person.
That you're not, right, and that they have to oversee your work for a certain period of time until you're eligible to take the exam. You have to have had over 6,000 hours in order of investigations in order to be able to actually take the exam and become your own independent private investigator.
How long did that take you?
Well, I could have done it probably after about 6 years. I never did because I had this other gentleman who was my qualified manager. And as he began to decide to move out of his business, I decided to take the exam. So I took it after about 13 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I just never did get around to it and then I had to take another test.
You know? Again, I already got my doctorate.
Yeah, why I don't want another test. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, okay, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit here. But DISC versus Myers-Briggs versus Enneagram, how do you decide what to use? Because everybody's got a different philosophy on personalities and personality tests and what to use. Personally, growing up, my mom used all of them at some point, to try to figure out how to help her children. But how do you figure that out with businesses and counsel them that direction?
Right. And actually, all three of those, the ones that you mentioned, the Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs, and the DISC, all of those are very valuable tools. I've taught the Myers-Briggs. I do teach the DISC as well. I've done a little bit of research on the Enneagram. There's strength finders, there's the colors, there's a lot of other ones as well. What I prefer, and the reason that I use the DISC profile, is because it not only helps you learn about yourself, and because it's so simple, it's only 4 styles, it's very easy to remember and to then apply it in the workplace.
I see.
And the publisher gives you tools of how to do that. And so, you're a different style than I am, so how would I work with you? Let's say we were trying to work on a big project. It would give me strategies and input of how to work most effectively with you. And that's why I like the Wiley product, because it gives us those tools.
It's a lot less categories.
Correct. There's only 4. Now you can combine them. Like Michael is a DI. I'm a straight D. You're probably a CD, right?
Something
like that,
Yeah.
right? So there can be combinations. So even in DISC, there could be 12 different combinations, but it's basically 4 styles. And so if you know the ins and outs of each of those styles, then any combination of putting them together works, and you can figure that out
So
for the
in
person.
the hiring process,
Okay.
how would an employer figure out what kind of personality he needs to hire or she needs to hire next?
Yeah, and that's really a great question, Emily, because it's really important. If you've got someone who's been really successful in a job, and maybe that person now is moving on, and you go, I want to replace it with somebody just like that, knowing what their style was can give you a really important clue as to the right type of person to fill that role.
I see.
Now, it's not always definitive.
Okay.
You could be wrong,
Yeah.
right? Because it may just look a little different the way someone of a different style might do it, but it's going to be a pretty good clue that if you had someone who was really successful, likely that style is going to help. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm going to bounce back and forth
That's
here.
okay.
Because I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what is the craziest HR story that you can tell on camera?
Well, I have several. One of them I shouldn't tell on camera, but I'll tell the other one.
I'm sure you get many.
Right, yes, we get a lot. Yeah, all of us HR professionals get together and say, we need to write a book and just put all of our HR stories in it, because
Like a poems of HR.
some of them are things you just would not believe. The stories, the excuses we get. Probably the most interesting investigation that I ever did was for a business who the owner had hired some female employees who had previously worked in a strip club. And he thought he could continue that same practice while they were at work. And so during their interviews, I learned all of the rules for nude dancing. Yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting investigation. So if I ever wanted to change professions, at least I knew the rules for that.
You knew the rules.
For that profession, if I wanted to go that direction.
That was in his hiring process?
Yeah, he actually had already hired them, and they were complaining because he was expecting the same kind of service he got at the strip club at work. And so,
Interesting.
Yes, yeah, it
So
was a
then,
very.
do people usually bring you on when there's issues or beforehand? Are you kind of thrown into the storm?
I'm thrown into the storm. Yeah, if I could convince people to bring me on before the storm hits, it would be wonderful. And some employers have gotten that message, but most of them wait until the storm hits, and then I get brought in to help and to resolve the issues.
So at what point should you be brought on? First employee, 10th, 5th?
Well, and that depends on the business and how comfortable they are in the HR realm. I mean, if they've done something where they've had a really good exposure to California employment law, they can probably go until they've had 5 or 10. The problem becomes we're all human, and you never know when that human issue is going to creep in. And so that's where the problem comes in. And so get me involved beforehand. Let me deal with it before you create the problem, so we don't have to try to solve it afterwards.
Oh, goodness.
yeah.
Yes, I'm sure that's a lot to solve.
Yes.
Well, and speaking of states, going from California to Arkansas to New York, what are the common state-to-state laws? Because we have a very broad, international even, audience. What are the common HR laws, and what are some of the things that really only contribute state to state or are changed state to state?
Well, and that's hard to say. I'm not an expert on all 50 states, so I can't tell you all of the laws that are different. But California has some very unique, specific laws, even now that federal law has begun to adopt. You may be familiar, here in California we have what's called pregnancy disability leave. Well, the federal government has now enacted a pregnancy leave policy. And so employers, even federally now, have to pay attention to pregnancy issues as a separate type of leave of absence, which we've had in California for eons. So yeah, so those kinds of things where there are just differences. Federal law applies, even things like the protected classes, age, race, religion, sex. There are certain ones that are federal laws that every state has to pay attention to. Here in California, we have a lot of additional ones, or we have a unique twist on a federal law. So a federal law may be in place, but California expands it or does something additional that makes us take it even further. So.
Yeah, that is a lot. I'm monitoring the chat, but that is a lot to consider.
It is.
And
yeah.
so, in your years of business, what has been the biggest shift you've seen in HR?
I would say the biggest shift that I've seen and I've experienced over the years has been the transition from HR being kind of that paper processing, policy police type of department to being a strategic partner with the business. They're now being seen as, oh, we need to talk to HR before we implement this new thing. Or, hey, we want to grow the business. We need to talk to HR about how to grow the business and hire the right people. And so they've begun to consider HR a strategic partner. And I think that's probably been the biggest shift over the years.
So then, if it is now more of a resource, I had a question and it totally went away. And of course we're live, so I can't fumble as easily as normal. But now that businesses are starting to see it as a resource, what do you think has been the shift that has allowed the HR department to be seen as a resource? And what is it that's continuing to, or I guess what is it about your business that's continuing to bring customers into you to see it as like, this is important and we need Juanita? Right,
and that's a great question, Emily, and I think what caused it to be seen more strategically is that HR became professional. We got to the point of getting certifications.
HR got HR?
Yes, HR got HR, but we actually went out and did the testing and had to meet certain standards, like an attorney does, or a doctor does, or an architect does. There's certain standards that they have to meet in order to be, quote, certified in that profession, and HR did that. I started taking those exams back in 2008, so they've been around a long time. Wow. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of national people who are nationally certified HR professionals. There are very fewer that are California certified. That's a much tougher exam to pass because of all of the California laws. So when they're looking for an HR professional, if you're here in the state of California, you need to find someone who's California certified, not just general certification for HR.
Sense.
Yeah.
We're particular, what can we
say?
Right,
yes, we like certain things, yes.
Yeah. Well, with that, thank you, Visioneers. I'm going to pass it back to Michael here in just a second.
And Visioneers, if you haven't checked out this week's episode on Small Business Celebration, you definitely want to check it out. It's an episode where we talk about, okay, what period of the year, what time of year do I actually become profitable? How do I forecast this? Also, we talk about, okay, I've got a major expense 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. How do I put that into my profit loss schedule right now so that I can have the revenue to be able to get that? So if you haven't checked out this week's episode on Small Business Celebration, you definitely want to check that out. Again, Juanita, thank you so much for joining us on Meat and Potatoes. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. It was a great opportunity. Thanks, Michael.
And if Visioneers want to get in touch with you and learn more about what you can do for them, how do they do that?
Well, they can call me at my number 661-747-4386, or they can go on my website at jwcempowers.com and find out more about us, and my contact information is there as well.
Until next Monday, when we've got Meat and Potatoes Live, we're going to be with Mike Saba, showing off one of the properties he has to offer to sell. Because, as you know, if you've been watching the main show, he's one of our main sponsors on the main show. Can't wait to see you then. Until next week at 5, we'll see you live.